It's time now for our 360 round. We'll bring in our panel to discuss this AMD and OpenAI deal. Joining us today, Logan Gilland, an analyst at Jewel Financial, and Brian Colello, the director of technology equity research at Morningstar. Logan, we'll start with you. What are some of your takeaways from this deal, initial impressions?
Yeah, obviously, OpenAI has kind of been the Midas touch lately for some of these companies, whether it's Nvidia or Oracle or now coming around on this deal with AMD. And what we're seeing is just an unbelievable amount of investment for them that they need to bring in. And I think the deal is 6 to 7 gigabytes of data that they're bringing in on the chip space for AMD. And putting that much of an investment, tens of billions of dollars, is obviously a boost for the company and it's breaking AMD out. Although the last 6 months have looked really good for AMD, if you look back at a year horizon around this time last year, stock was in about the same place. So it's had kind of a full run and now obviously breaking out to new highs. So it's really interesting, these deals that are in place, and some of the kind of circular nature of some of them, like the fact that OpenAI will now have a chance to potentially buy about 10% of AMD through warrants over the coming years if they hit milestones and price targets with the stock. But I find it really fascinating. It shows that AI is still obviously a massive space. And OpenAI is doing a lot more deals than just Nvidia. They're touching a lot of different areas and they're bringing in a lot of resources. So obviously that company believes there's going to be huge upside for some of the investment that they're making.
And Logan, we're going to come back to that circular deal concept because this is certainly not the first one that we've seen there. But I do want to get Brian's thoughts and some takeaways on this. Was this announcement surprising to you, expected to you, and do you think it will be beneficial for AMD?
Surprise in terms of the size, not a surprise that there's a partnership. OpenAI has been working with Oracle. Oracle's actually has one of the bigger clusters with AMD already, and we sort of heard from the company that no company is going to go from 0 GPUs to 100,000 without testing in between. So we're not surprised that OpenAI and Oracle are in the mix for AMD, but for AMD investors, this is the type of deal, size of deal, validation of the technology that investors have been looking for. And so I think the breakout is justified. We're at a 210 fair value estimate. We were at 155 before this. So you think the revenue upside from this should be significant. Timing will be uncertain. There's all sorts of risk with AI build-outs, whether it's energy and power or can the supply chain keep up, things like that. So we'll be watching that over the next few years. But if OpenAI is going to hit its aspirations, and they're lofty, but if the supply chain and everybody supports that, this is going to be great upside for AMD.
And staying with you, Brian, you mentioned the potential upside there. Lisa Su saying this will add double-digit billions of annual revenue, then went so far as to say the possibility of well over $100 billion in revenue over the next few years. I guess my first question is, do you think that that's possible? And then my second question to that is, how close does that get them to competing with Nvidia if it does come to fruition?
The answer is yes, I do think it's possible, and I think this is what investors were always hoping for. But let's keep in mind that AMD is going to put up about $7 billion of AI GPU revenue this year. So again, even if you get to a business 15, 20, 25 billion per year for AMD, that's still a terrific upside versus where it's at. It does put them a little bit closer with Nvidia, but I do think this AMD deal is additive to what Nvidia is spending. Most of these models are built and trained on Nvidia today. Nobody's going to slow down their development to try to cost optimize and move it over to different GPUs and different racks. So I think Nvidia is still going to take the lion's share of this market, but AMD is going to supplement OpenAI, and that's perfectly fine. That's still upside for investors. That's still a great business. There's nothing wrong with being in second place in this industry.
And coming back to you, Logan, about this circular deal mixing, we've seen a lot of this, mix of investment and commercial relationship come up in this AI race. This the latest, but, interestingly, to look at this one where AMD giving up part of its equity stake potentially if OpenAI meets its requirements, whereas on the Nvidia deal, Nvidia taking a piece of OpenAI. What is your thought on the circular deal mixing that we're seeing, and maybe even the differences between some of the deals that we've seen?
Yeah, I think there's some good things and there's some bad things with it. Obviously, you're adding to a partnership, a true partnership moving forward. When you look at Nvidia and their investment into OpenAI to build out the data warehousing, and then this one in which OpenAI is now going to be able to partner with AMD and own a stake of the company long term. I think it's a positive in the way that, okay, these companies are very reliant on each other. They're going to move in the same direction, and all boats are going to rise with the rising tide. So that's a positive, but the same thing, it can be scary to see if we have any kind of slowdown. If OpenAI is not able to transition what they're doing from an investment standpoint to true revenue, which I think is what we're really looking for, is the down the stream, what are companies, what are investors, what are businesses doing with OpenAI or with ChatGPT or with Anthropic is another one that's coming up in the news. What are they utilizing these technologies for to produce efficiencies and ultimately lead to revenues and earnings increases over time? We have to see that. So having these circular deals is obviously compounding the effect that if we had a turnaround and AI slowed down for some reason, or we just had an overall economic slowdown, these companies are going to compound their maybe troubles that could happen. So the hard chip space that we're looking at here with AMD or Nvidia, it's one that concerns me a little bit as far as loading into it. I think you take some of the profits that you've had in these type of companies because, again, they are circular. They are kind of layering on top of each other. And if we see a decline in the space, it's going to hit all parties involved. And obviously, AI has been leading the market for the last few days. When we're kind of ignoring a government shutdown, we're ignoring some of the issues in the jobs market because AI has been so good.
And Brian, we're running really tight on time here, so I need this to be a quick answer, but I do want your thought here. Outside of a slowdown, what concerns or risks do you think we face in this AI infrastructure build out?
I think energy and power is perhaps the biggest constraint. Supply chain can be a constraint. Financing is, we're getting questions all the time. How is OpenAI funding all of this? But I think energy and power, if that build out is slower than anticipated, then OpenAI is not going to be able to build out the way they think. And all of these deals, they look good on paper. Can they actually come to fruition, or is it going to be slower than we all expect because of the energy grid?
Well, I appreciate you both being with us to break down some of these major headlines we're seeing in the AI space, particularly this AMD OpenAI deal. That's Logan Gilland from Jewel Financial and Brian Colello from Morningstar. Thank you both again.